Funding myth number 6, you can't tell investors what to do. So micromanaging sounds like something you can only do with employees and not investors, when in fact, it's a good sign to your investors in your ability to coordinate and execute tasks. However, do not be overbearing, annoying, or pushy. Simply communicate that each request has a purpose and it's in their best interest to keep moving forward. The important point here is that the deal is not done until the check hits your bank account. So closing out a deal could be a lot like being an air traffic controller. There are hundreds of variables and multiple people that need to be in tune to make sure that you get the deal on the landing strip. And it's your job to make sure that everything goes smoothly, as the investors are typically closing multiple deals and can be crossing wires and leading to lost deals. By this point, you should have a relatively close relationship with the investor, so that means that you can have an obsessive attitude towards the details and getting the deal done. In order to micromanage investors without leaving a bad taste in everyone's mouth, we will cover our tips on delicately but efficiently moving through the closing process. First tip is, if the investor is slow to act, get everyone to agree on a master list of closing documents, and this organizes the workload of necessary documents to help limit the document creep. After that, get the contact information of each person involved with each item, and that could be the accountants or the attorneys, etc. After that, you'll want to publish this list to all the interested parties and have everyone sign off on the responsibility list in order to be able to hold each person accountable. The third tip is to convince your investors that there's an imminent date that the investment needs to be deposited to avoid a moving target date for closing. An example of this is a promise to customers, a product launch date, or a closing date for other investors. So the farther the date out, the more chance you have of people wandering off and getting interested in some other transaction that they're working on. The fourth tip is to include everyone involved in the communication line on every email so that there are no glitches. And after that, the final tip is to arrange multiple calls to ensure that the tasks are being completed, or if there are any potential delays on the horizon. And if the closing is scheduled to conclude in 2 weeks, arrange to have conference calls twice or 3 times per week. Remember, this is you, the air traffic controller, staying in consistent communication with all the personnel necessary to land the plane safely and on time. To conclude this short video, micromanaging the closing, no matter how tedious or frustrating it might be, it has its distinct advantages. For one, your deal will close on time. And this should be the only motivation you need for losing sleep over every single detail of a stressful closing. In micromanaging this final leg of raising capital for your startup, you should also reinform your investors why they wanted to invest in the first place. You know how to make things happen and make them money in the process. And you don't get to be an entrepreneur unless you conclude this transaction. So that is why it's important enough for you to be a control freak and tracking every last detail until it's done. And it's not like you won't have any trouble returning to your easygoing, likable self when the money's in your account.